Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Coping Together. It's our web series where we discuss different mental health topics, either with guest speakers that are professionals in the field or that have lived experience in the topic that we are going to talk about. I'm really excited today to have Faith and Alan. Faith and Alan, they both work with the Mental Health Connections program and they work with our Guardian Advocate program. And I'm really excited to have Jennifer here today. She's one of our most seasoned Guardian Advocates. And we would just, that's the topic of today's video. We would love to talk about how she found out about it, the GA program in general, what it's like to be a Guardian Advocate. And so with that being said, Jennifer, how did you find out about the Guardian Advocate program?
I found out about this program through another student at in the bachelor's program that I was in at UCF, the psychology program. We were in the same research group and we had very similar career interests. So she let me know about this program and I was immediately very excited about the prospect of contributing on this level. One, because as a student, it's a really helpful thing to be able to get a leg up and to see the field on the ground floor to kind of get an experience before you're even there. And also because I have quite a bit of personal experience with friends and family members having to deal with Baker Acts and going into the hospital against their will for treatment. So I've seen what it looks like at the moment when they're going in, and sometimes it's, a really low point for them. But I've also seen the aftermath and the improvement and how much this treatment is needed and helps and how much it matters that they have a really good experience there because, they get so much better when they get out. And so I was really, really excited to help out and learn about what it's like. At this point, I've had over 70 clients, I think. I've taken quite a bit more requests than that, but some people get discharged and court doesn't happen, but so I've learned a whole bunch in my year and a half as a Guardian Advocate.
We're so grateful for all you do for us. That's really just an incredible thing that you've done, not only for our organization, but for our community. And it definitely sounds like you found this professionally and personally gratifying. Is that true?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned so much just being able to interact with not only clients, but also staff in this field right now. So I feel like I'm really helping out, but I also feel like I'm not only benefiting myself for the future, but also benefiting my future clients so that I can do the best by them.
Wonderful, wonderful. So once you heard about the GA program, how was it like? What was the process of becoming a GA?
Well, I got in contact with the organization and I got my training set up, and training was a couple hours. I think it was about 4 hours. And we were in a room. It was maybe 5 or 6 of us, and Charlotte Melton was the one who did my training. It was super, super informative. I got a whole bunch of knowledge about what Baker Acts look like and what it looks like to advocate for someone who cannot advocate for themselves.
Real quick, Jen, I'm so sorry to jump in. Just for our viewers who aren't necessarily, maybe they're not familiar with the Florida Baker Act, or it might be referred to as another name in their state, if they're watching out of state, can you just kind of give us a brief idea of what does the Baker Act entail, and is it voluntary, is it involuntary? When is a GA needed?
So when an individual is having mental health issues that are getting in the way of their daily life, they're either a danger to themselves or others, they are Baker Acted through a court case where the court has to determine that they are in fact a danger to themselves or others. So it is ethical to, in a sense, put them someplace they don't necessarily want to be so that they can receive treatment that they need. And it's been decided that at this time in their episode, they are not able to advocate for themselves for one reason or another. So another person is assigned maybe assigned is a bad word, but to help them advocate for themselves. And sometimes that's a family member. I know in my training, there were people taking the training to use that in their personal lives, not necessarily for this organization, but to advocate for someone in their family or a friend of theirs. Or sometimes if a family member maybe isn't available or doesn't feel comfortable with that, maybe feels like they don't know the ins and outs of that, then someone like me with this organization is put in place with them so that we can help advocate for them.
Okay. And so to clarify, for the Guardian Advocate program, for when a GA steps in and goes to court, when does court take place? Is it immediately after a client or a patient is Baker acted? Is it within a couple of days after a 72-hour kind of hold for evaluation, things like that?
So they're taken in, and there's a first evaluation, and then there's a second evaluation from another psychiatrist in the facility. And at that point, it's usually, I would say, a couple days after. I've seen up to a week after their initial entrance into the facility, where they have the court case, because they have to get them on the docket. They have to get a guardian advocate or a family member to advocate for them. And at which point they have the court case, and there has to be what's called a treatment period assigned, because rightfully so, there are a lot of rules within the legal system where you cannot keep someone in a facility against their will for more than 6 months. If you do more than 6 months, then you have to go back to court and redetermine that person needs to be there. And those ins and outs of the legal system are necessary and helpful because it holds people accountable. You can't just keep someone in a facility for an undetermined time. Most often the treatment periods that I see are up to 4 weeks. So if the court assigns up to 4 weeks, then in 4 weeks, if the psychiatrist determines they need more time, they need to go back to court.
Okay. And I have one other question for you in regards to this before we kind of move on. Can you give me an idea of an example of someone who may be Baker acted, an example of a diagnosis or situation, anything like that?
Yeah, a diagnosis that I see very, very often is schizophrenia, and different types of schizophrenia. I've noticed that in the crisis facility that I work most often in, you don't see a lot of cases like generalized anxiety disorder or depression. And I've found that more often it's because when those people are in crisis, they are more or less aware of their crisis. So they are more likely to be able to advocate for themselves. That's not across the board. Of course, there are exceptions for everything. But I found that schizophrenia is most common, probably mostly because there's a sense of reality lost a little bit. So when they are having their episode and it gets really bad, oftentimes they take themselves off medication because they're suspicious of it or what have you. And it's those people more often that I see in crisis centers that have to receive treatment against their will. And of course, it's against their will at first because there's a reality loss there. They don't really know what's happening. But I've seen some amazing progress once they get back on the medication that they know works for them. They start to realize why they're there and realize the help that they're getting and why they need it. And then, they get right back to their baseline.
Thank you so much for that clarification. I'm sorry, Mary, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that must be really rewarding watching that.
It is. And one of the things that, if I could impart advice into other people who want to be a guardian advocate for someone, sometimes it's really hard because maybe their baseline isn't that great. So you want to see amazing progress with every client. And one of the things that's hard to accept at first is that that's sometimes not the case. Every client's different. You have to get to know each client individually and what their normal is. So when you finally do have those clients that at the beginning, they're not making any eye contact, they don't remember your name, they don't want to see you, all the way to they're excited to tell you about their day and they know your name and they're asking their nurses for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's an amazing moment. It's just realizing that might not happen every time.
Yeah.
That's actually a perfect segue, I think, into what Alan was looking forward to ask, which is a little bit more about, your, like when you really got started, once you finished the training, you finished the interview process. So Alan, with that being said, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you finished your training and everything and got done with your interview, what did that first, court meeting and that first interaction with your client, how did that look like? And were there any challenges you had, coming in fresh and never done it before?
I was super nervous. I was super, super nervous because there's kind of like a feeling of enormity with this whole thing. Like it feels just really, really big. It feels like you have a lot of responsibility and you might not feel ready for it. But when I first got when I first went to court, I actually went to court like 3 times before I actually got into court because my client kept getting discharged before I would go in, which is obviously a great thing because they've made enough progress where they don't need me anymore. But I was really excited to get my hands in there. So when I finally did get my first client and I did get into court, it was so interesting to see what court looks like, because I'm very interested in working. I want to do therapy. I want to be a clinical psychologist within the prison system. So I'm interested in the legal aspects of what this looks like. Very cool. There's a magistrate, 2 lawyers, and they're all, doing their legal thing. That's very, very formal. It feels kind of scary at first. But for a guardian advocate who's not a family member, who's an impartial third party, it's super, super easy because they just ask you yes or no questions about whether you can do this. And then at that point, your client can decide to come to court if they want to. But if they don't want to, they don't have to. So sometimes you see them day of and sometimes you don't. But my very first client, I will remember her forever because when I first saw her, she made no eye contact. I was told by some of the staff that there might not be any point with meeting with her because she didn't talk to anyone. When we sat with each other, I introduced myself, I talked a little bit, but she was looking like off to the side the whole time, didn't speak at all. And it was a kind of difficult first experience because when you're learning how to interact with individuals in crisis, it's kind of like a trial by fire thing because everyone's different and you don't really know what that looks like until you just get in there. So it was difficult at first, but I had her as a client for about 2 months. And over that time, she was a totally different person. I think it was like 2 weeks in where she spent the whole meeting actually looking at me. And then about a week or 2 after that, she remembered my name. And then after that, she started talking to me. And like I said, every client's different. Sometimes they want to talk to you and they want to vent a little bit, maybe about other patients on the unit that they're annoyed by, because it's close quarters and everyone's in a state of crisis, so it's difficult sometimes. But and sometimes they just want to talk about like a puzzle that they did that day, or their family when they get out and who they're going to see. And she really opened up to me a whole bunch, and I got to know her and she got to know me a little bit. And and when she got discharged, when she came in, actually she was homeless and was really struggling a whole bunch with her mental illness on the streets. But when she got discharged into a group home where they learn job skills and stuff like that. And she was continuing her medication, and I hope nothing but the best from her. it's been about a year at this point, but I still think about her.
It definitely sounds like she had an impact on you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a quick question about like when you started interacting with her. What strategies did you use to overcome that struggle that you were having with that communication, her not looking at you? Was it just persistence or did you do other things?
A lot of it was persistence, and a lot of it was what I mentioned before, where you really just have to get to know their normal at the time, their intended baseline where they're hoping to get to. And you get that obviously through talking to them, but also talking to the staff, reading their file, getting as much information about them as possible. Because with that first client and with many clients after, I did take the time to read their whole file. So I knew about most times I knew about why they were there. I knew a little bit about their situation outside of there. I knew about their illness, and I knew about what issues they had been having. So that kind of helps when they're not talking to you or they don't trust you as much, because you already know these things, but it's about getting the right way for them to feel comfortable to tell you what you already know. So you don't want to, it's a process, because you don't want to intimidate them. You don't want to be too much. Oftentimes when I meet with clients who don't feel comfortable talking to me yet, it's just like a 5-minute meeting where I just let them know, hey, if anything's going on, you can let me know. If you want to talk about some stuff, you can let me know. If you want to talk about how you ended up here, you can let me know. And again, I know all of these things because I've read their file, I've talked to staff, but it's all about getting them to feel comfortable.
Yeah, just kind of showing up for them. Yeah. Knowing
so even if they don't want to talk to you, still showing up multiple times a week. And sometimes they don't want to sit down and have a conversation with you, and that's okay, as long as I can get my eyes on them, maybe give a little wave like, hey, I see physically that you were okay. I'll see you next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just being consistent and having that person know that there's someone there that cares, right? That wants to know that they're okay.
Yeah,
I'm sure it just means like the world to them.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind my asking, in regards to that experience, I know Alan touched on it a little bit. He asked you about overcoming those challenges. Was it a little bit of a process or an adjustment for you to realize, like because of the work that you're doing and the fact, like you said, that these clients and these physicians are in a state of vulnerability and they're really going through a lot at that point, that you can't take it personally. Like you had to learn that it wasn't about you. It was something so much bigger than that, and that it's not like you did anything wrong in that regard.
That's very true. Yeah. With a lot of these people, this is one of the lowest, if not the lowest point in their life. And they just need to know that somebody's there and somebody cares. And, the staff in these facilities, they are doing amazing things, but they've also got a lot of people on their plate. It can be overwhelming, and for the patient, it can be frustrating because you have issues that you want to talk about and no one seems to be able to talk about them when you want to talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be hard. So I think one of the things that I really try to stress to my clients when I show up, I am here for you. People that are not my clients on the unit that are coming up and try to talk to me, like, no, I'm sorry, I don't work here. I'm sorry, I don't work here. I'm here for that person. And not only does it protect you, because you have to, with this position, you have to set really clear boundaries. It's very important, not just with your client, but with people who are not your client, who try to come into the room or try to walk up to you. They are in a state of crisis. A lot of times they're not logically thinking about things. So as long as you're really firm, it helps a whole bunch. But not taking it personally is a big thing, because, these people are going through so much. This is their time to be incredibly selfish and focus on their healing. And it is my job to help them with that. This is all about them. And if they don't want to talk to me, it is absolutely nothing to do with me. They are having a rough time. So if you just be consistent, show up, show that you care, while setting your boundaries, it shows them, they learn over time that, hey, this person is here for me. This person keeps showing up. Maybe I can bring these issues that I'm having to this person and they'll help me out. And a lot of times it's like I had a client who was talking to me about how he really wanted more blankets. He was a skinny kid. So, and it's very cold on that unit. So he told me that he really wanted more blankets. So I was like, okay, I will help you. And I walked right into the therapist office and I said, hey, this is what I need from you for this person. And he got his blankets. And from that point on, it was just that little moment that he thought, oh, okay, progress. I can talk to this person.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, he started to open up to me.
So it sounds like it's really about establishing that connection of trust. And, I think Mary touched on it a little bit, and you did as well, with making them a priority. You're there for them. It's so much more than just a task. And I mean, I think that speaks for itself since it's a volunteer program. So absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that clarification. I think it really helps anybody who's thinking about doing it with, addressing some of the maybe initial concerns that they might have, or, thoughts they have going into it. I know I for sure appreciate your input on your own experiences, because it's so different to hear it from someone who's done it, 70 times and has had even more requests. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is coming from an outsider's perspective, but I know that you mentioned that sometimes in these facilities in the hospital, the patients, they're feeling frustrated because the staff has so many people that they have to take care of. And to me, it kind of sounds like this is mutually beneficial to both the patient and to the hospital, because you're helping to meet the client's needs, and you're also kind of helping out the hospital as well by helping to kind of care for and advocate for the client.
Yeah, and sometimes these individuals know what they want and what they need, but having 5 to 10 minutes with the clinical psychiatrist for like every couple days, it's hard for them to organize their thoughts so that they can ask for what they need during that time. So I come in 3 times a week, and I can spend as much time as I need to getting them to explain what they need. And then I can be more direct with the therapist or the psychiatrist. And it really just streamlines things. It makes things a lot easier, because, they need stuff, but they don't know how to ask for it sometimes. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they don't feel confident enough to, because, it's scary as someone who's dealing with a lot, being on the other side of the desk, and you see all these other people on the other side of the desk with paperwork and hustling and, on the computer and dealing with medication. It can be a lot. So
yeah.
I'm much less intimidating.
I can imagine that it can be a little bit intimidating to kind of advocate for yourself, even if I'm in a relatively good and stable place right now, I would think. And even for myself, like, I have to remind myself to advocate for myself. And so just guardian advocates helping people at their most vulnerable time, like, get these needs and wants fulfilled, is just, it's kind of beyond like words, but the service that they're doing.
It really helps for them to know that they just have someone in their corner.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just the idea of it.
Yeah. It can be I can imagine that it's really isolating, and having that person, that support person there, just makes all the difference.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that you've mentioned a little bit about when you first started, you were really anxious. And I can totally relate to that, understand. But before you started, did you have any specific concerns or worries?
Yeah, I have a couple that I was really thinking about a lot before I actually got my first client. One was court,
Mhm.
because it's kind of a vague word. You don't like
Yeah.
it could mean anything. But when it comes to mental health court, it's not at the courthouse. It's actually at the facility. It's more casual than you think it is. And although like during the actual process, they're recording it, they're recording the audio, and there are formal questions and back and forth, it's not nearly as scary as you think it is going in.
Did you have to wear
And
a suit going into it, or
I
what's
had
the
to
kind of dress
wear
code like?
professional looking clothes, more of like a business casual kind of thing, but wasn't a huge deal. It was okay. And I was also worried about the client in the court setting, because sometimes for the client, they don't actually know what's going on. And the court seems very, very, very formal to them. So it makes them anxious, which to some people, not all people, but to some people leads to them getting aggressive because they don't understand. So they get angry. And a lot of times, in their opinion, especially this, since this is because this is before a guardian advocate has been given to them, so they, at that point, they could be refusing medication every day, and there's not really a whole bunch that the staff can do besides giving them emergency shots, which they try not to unless they're actually becoming an aggressive threat on the unit. So if they deny their daily medication, there's not much they can do until they have a guardian advocate who can approve the medication, and then they give it to them. But so a lot of times what you have is a client coming into the court unmedicated at the top of their crisis, anxious and upset. And it sounds like all these people in the court are, especially the psychiatrist, are not saying truthful things about them. That's not true, but that's their experience.
Mhm.
So I was anxious about that going in, but the facility is really, really great with realizing that, not just in the courtroom, but also on the unit. They're very good with seeing when people are getting agitated, and intervening when they need to. On the unit, it's, like I said before, it is super important to set your boundaries. And it is nerve-wracking because I for one, I have a lot of empathy for people in this position, because, you know, this is what I want to do with my life. I genuinely care about people who are in this rough spot. So it can be difficult when you have all these people coming up who seem like they just genuinely want to talk, but they're not your client. So at the beginning, I did struggle with that because I didn't want to come across as rude. I didn't want them to think, I didn't want them to think I didn't care. It was hard at first, but once you start realizing that these people are in crisis, so they're going to act possibly out of turn. It is of no fault of their own. They're dealing with a lot of stuff and they're going through this episode. However, you, as someone who is stable, is not in an episode, you need to be very firm with how you interact with them. And you can't feel bad about it because you're protecting yourself, yes, but you're also protecting them. Because you're keeping them at a distance, the people that you're not there for, again, you're keeping them at a distance to protect yourself and them, because they can, you know, sometimes overstep their bounds.
Thank you for that, for sure. And I know we're running a little bit close to our time, but I know there was just a couple more questions I had for you. Alan, I know you were curious to ask about, with everything that happened back in March, with the start of COVID-19 and the social distancing and those closures. I know you were curious as to how it affected the hospital system. Did you want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, from the perspective of the GA, as someone who is responsible for visiting their clients frequently to see if they're okay, and obviously to approve medication and treatment and stuff like that, how is that looking like with the whole COVID-19 social distancing and everything like that? How are you guys currently doing that?
It definitely looks different. It's a process for everyone to learn and get used to it, but we're doing everything over the phone or over video chat now. So I'm approving medication over the phone. The unit's calling me pretty frequently, and I'm also calling them 3 to 4 times a week so that I can specifically talk to my client on the phone. As happens sometimes, I currently have a client who oftentimes doesn't want to talk to anyone. So that is difficult when it comes to this, because normally if my client doesn't want to talk to me when I come physically visit, it's not a big deal because I can put my eyes on them. I can see that they're physically okay and I can leave, I can see them next time. Now I don't really have that opportunity because it's just that they don't want to come to the phone. But the facility has just now introduced video chat that I can set up through the therapist, so I can physically see my client. Even if they don't want to talk, they can walk right up to the video and I can see that they're okay. I fully plan on using that with this particular client because he doesn't really want to talk often. But if you have a client who likes to talk, phone calls have been fine. I attended court for the first time yesterday over video chat. Super easy. Pretty much the same process, just on a laptop.
I actually did hear, to kind of build on that, one of the things I've been hearing is that actually a lot of crisis stabilization units and hospitals are seeing an increase in Baker Acts, whether voluntary or involuntary. So that kind of allows me to jump and ask, so they're still having courts, so obviously there are still clients that are in need of GAs right now, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of clients that are still in need of GAs. And when this whole thing started, a lot of GAs, including myself, because I live with someone who's high risk, I stopped going out and I stopped going to court and visiting clients. And I did that more towards the beginning of all this before stuff really, really shut down. So I know that there are other people who just stopped taking clients, which is a lot for the system to handle because, people don't stop coming. People still need to take them on. So there's still definitely a massive need for that right now.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you kind of elaborating on that. And so like I said, we are running close to our time, but Mary, I know you wanted to ask, as more about Jen's perspective from being a student in the mental health field. And I know most of us have a bachelor's or background to some extent in the mental health field, so we all share that passion. But Mary, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, similar to what Faith said, I really would like to know the unique perspective of just someone who is being a student in this background, in this field. What's it like with this experience of being a GA? How do you find it to be beneficial?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've learned so much. And I graduated with my bachelor's last May. So I had been a guardian advocate for, I think, about 6 months at that point. And I'm starting my graduate program, Master's in Clinical Psychology with UCF in the fall. And I plan on continuing to be a GA.
Wait, you are?
Yeah.
That's my program.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We're in the same
program.
Worlds collide.
Amazing. I'll see you at school.
Awesome. Sorry.
Okay.
I heard you say your master's program. I was like, I wonder where she's getting her master's. And then you said ECF. I was like, oh, we're in the same program.
Nice.
Oh, that's
awesome. But that's cool. It's really, really great because not only do I have these experiences that I can bring to class, but I also have class that helps me with these experiences. So I'm able to, like I said before, I'm able to get an inside look at what it looks like before I even get into the field. So I can talk to my professors about it and I can get advice and information. And one of the big things as a student that I've learned through this program is how real burnout is for professionals in this field. It made me really value self-care before I even started my graduate program, which is really helpful. But I noticed that if you don't take care of yourself, oftentimes it's the patients who pay the price. Because naturally, we're humans. We get to the point where we just can't take in anymore, that it becomes too much. And so taking care of yourself is hugely, hugely important so that you can make sure that you are there for your clients, you are there for your patients in a healthy way. Also, just learning how to interact with people in crisis. It's different every time, and it can be scary when you've never done it before. But now I feel like I've got some cards in my back pocket. When I go into my pre-practicum and my internship and all that other stuff, starting graduate school, I feel like I already know how to best interact with individuals in crisis. So I feel like that's hugely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're totally fine. So with that being said, since I know that we're kind of running out of time, what would you say to someone who is considering being a GA?
That's a really great question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say that it is an incredible experience that you should not pass up, because the opportunity to help people that are in this stage of their life, in this point, is something that you will never forget. It's something that you will carry with you for the rest of your life. And knowing that you've been able to be a part of their lives like this, and that you've been able to make them feel comfortable and feel safe, it's very impactful. And it's something that I will always think about, is being able to help these people in whatever way I can.
Well, we can certainly tell that from everything that you've said today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even in your face, I can see it, and we all can.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, thank you so much for talking with us, Jen. I think you've given us a lot of insight, even those of us who work in the field, a little bit more about, the perspective of being a GA. And for anybody who's watching who maybe they've had a loved one who's been Baker acted, maybe they themselves have had an experiences being a client in the situation, I think they would all really do appreciate, hearing your perspective and learning more about the intricacies of the process. So I just wanted to thank you again for talking with us. And I wish you the absolute best of luck in your program. I know we all do. I guess I'll see you there.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. And if you guys, thank you so much for watching our video. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Mary, as always, is going to post any of our contact information when this video is live. And you guys can always reach out to us, and we're just all here for you. And please let us know if you have a topic you want us to talk about next. So thank you so much. Again, I'm Faith, Mary, Alan, and Jen. Thank you so much for being our guests today. And you guys have a great day. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.